Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 242. Today's episode is part of my personal journey through understanding my emotions and being able to, quote unquote, regulate my emotions in certain ways that have actually benefited my success over the years. One of the things that I love the most, besides seeing my clients be so successful in their careers, is how I need to step up to the plate. If I am going to coach women to do things outside of their comfort zone, I am constantly striving and challenging myself to do the same. And so in today's episode, I am sharing with you this tool that I have learned and been able to further develop and dive deeper into my understanding of this tool over the years. All right, let's get started.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. I hope you've been listening to my Summer of Magic interview series on LinkedIn. It is absolutely phenomenal. We have heard from so many female leaders as well as experts in the space of advancing women into higher levels of leadership. And the episodes are all 10, 15 minutes long, and you can follow me on LinkedIn to watch the replays as well as a couple more upcoming, very exciting episodes that I have coming up where we're celebrating two women in particular that have had pretty phenomenal success stories over the Summer of Magic. Of course, it didn't happen overnight. Their success wasn't just a coincidence. It's something that they have been putting into place and cultivating over the last couple of years of their career. And I am so excited to celebrate them and to talk about their journey and really share with you some magical words of wisdom. So make sure you're following me on LinkedIn at Stacy Mayer, so that you can find out and be invited personally to those live interviews, as well as all of the replays for the previous interviews that I've done over the Summer of Magic. So the Summer of Magic is not over, and I want to give you in today's episode a really simple tool, but it's simple only in the fact that it's like one thing. It's actually, you could write it on a Post-it note to remind yourself of every single week, but it's absolutely impossible. It feels impossible to do on a regular basis. And I say this 150% from personal experience. And I want to break down why this particular skill set is seemingly so hard to implement in our own personal life. So you're probably what I would call like a wisdom seeker, somebody who is looking to grow, somebody who has read a ton of self-help or leadership development books. You've been working on yourself, quote unquote, for a very long time. And you may have come across this idea that we need to be friends with our emotions. So good or bad emotions, they're all welcome. Like, say, for instance, we need fear, we need anger, we also need joy, and we need both the good and the bad emotions. And one of the schools of thought and the reasoning for this is because if we push down our emotions, and we've seen this in previous generations, maybe perhaps your grandparents or somebody that you know and love very dearly is quote unquote not very emotional. It doesn't mean that they don't have emotions. They're just very good at suppressing and not showing those emotions. Or maybe you have been very good at suppressing your emotions, especially in a corporate environment, and you have either blown up at the wrong time, or maybe you blow up on your family because you're pushing down those hard emotions and not letting them out. So having a good cry every now and then is incredibly useful, and it allows these emotions to quote unquote work through us and to come out the other side so that then we can reestablish ourselves in society. That's my 2 cents about why we shouldn't suppress emotions, except for one emotion in particular. There is something that we do on a regular basis. I know that you do this because I do it. If you're listening to this, if you are a corporate badass leader, I guarantee that you have this emotion. And I would love for you, if you could, take a pledge with me to take that emotion and just throw it in the garbage. Literally just like take the emotion and never have it again. You can suppress this emotion. You can choose to ignore this emotion. You can choose to just shove it out the door, throw it in the garbage, flush it down the toilet. I don't care what you do. We do not need this emotion. And what emotion is it? It is the emotion of judgment. Judgment holds a useless place in our emotional gamut. It is a completely useless emotion. It does us no good. There are other useless emotions that I can talk about on a different episode, but this one in particular, if you never judged again, you would have a ton of benefit in your career. So I talk about it as being a useless emotion, but actually it has a negative impact on us. So I want to talk in today's episode about judgment, about how we can identify how it's hurting us, and then what are some of the ways that we can begin to get rid of it, to push it out of our life, and to be willing to never have that emotion enter our sphere of reference ever again. This is my wish for each and every one of you. So first of all, I want to talk about how I have experienced judgment in my own life. Growing up, I'm certain that I had a ton of judgment. I was very annoyed at other people. As an adult, I have been very annoyed at other people. I judge them. And sometimes I justifiably judge them. They're annoying. They're making dumb decisions. They are hurting me, or they seem to just be idiots. Why are they taking up space in my life? And I am judging them both verbally, like out loud to other people. Like, have you ever gossiped and commiserated with somebody over how stupid somebody else is? We like to bond over judgment, and it does serve a purpose at that time, or a seeming purpose, in that it helps us feel righteous. And so as a corporate badass, I will venture to say that you are smarter than most other people in the world. And even at your organization, as an educated woman, as a woman who has really excelled in her career, had great degrees of success, perhaps you're making $300,000-$400,000 a year. So you are the exception to the rule when it comes to being superior. This could come from your own privilege in life, and it could also come from your hard work and your dedication and how smart you are. And you have a right to enjoy that, how smart you are and how amazing you are and how wonderful you are. And sometimes our judgment feels, like I said, righteous. So let's say, for instance, that you have worked really, really hard in your career, and your boss, who is one level up, probably gets paid a significant amount more than you and is not nearly as smart as you, in that they don't make really great decisions. They don't seem like a great leader. They're all over the place. Maybe they're even mean to their employees. And it makes sense that you judge them. Like, it makes sense that you say, wow, that person is really annoying, and why can't I get ahead? And I'm so frustrated. I can't believe that this thing happened, or I don't even want to work here anyway. Like, I know you have said these words to yourself. And this is how you can start to identify if you have judgment. So I think something about another person that is negative, or I think something about another situation that is negative. Now, I want you to imagine with me that you never thought that negative thought about that person again, or that you never thought that negative thought about that situation again. And really kind of check in with yourself and see what other additional thoughts come up for you. And for me, initially, when I was deciding whether or not I personally believed that judgment was a useless emotion, I actually stuck my feet in the sand a little bit farther and said, no, you know what? It is useful because I'm being taken advantage of. So I thought that judgment and judging other people or judging situations or asking for my money back because how dare they do something to me, then that was all very useful. And it was harbored around this idea of judgment, that I was able to see things that other people couldn't see. And so I would be frustrated. I was able to speak up for myself. I felt bold. So all of my judgment was clouded in this self-righteousness that I was able to motivate myself to do more. So then fast forward to about 3 years ago, and I was in a coaching program called Mind Magic by one of my phenomenal teachers, Tracy Litt. And she had us sign a piece of paper, and it was the no judgment rule. And it was literally a contract. And her invitation to us was for the next 30 days to let go of judgment. And so first of all, I want to invite each and every one of you to make this contract with yourself. If you're interested at all in this experiment, now, honestly, it's not going to hurt anybody. And I want you to really start to believe that, because I felt like if I let go of judgment, then I would disappear or be taken advantage of and so on. So I signed this piece of paper and I was like, okay, let's do this giant experiment of letting go of judgment for 30 days and see what happens in my life. And this very cool, interesting thing happened. Let me explain to you my process, and then I would love to also you explore your own personal understanding of this. But for me, what ended up happening was when I let go of judging other people, so this situation, this thing that was happening, the cashier wronged me, overcharged me, and so I'm mad for 5 days and I don't even ask for my money back. So anything that happened to me, if I let go of judging other people, what I noticed during those 30 days is that I was actually judging myself. So once I let go of judging other people, then it reflected back on me. So I couldn't blame whatever was happening to me in my life on somebody else. So I was just sort of like, oh, I'm doing this wrong. So the judgment sort of changed, turned into frustration. I don't even know what I'm doing. I noticed that I had some very negative self-talk that I was like, well, even this contract is stupid, but it seemed to be reflected a little bit more on me personally and less about the stupid contract, because I had let go of judgment, what I thought, which was let go of judgment of others. And then I started noticing how I was judging myself all the time. Like those 30 days were pretty freaking scary. Like I was like, oh my God, what are these negative thoughts that I have in my head all week long? This negative soundtrack that I'm reflecting. And, I say this with a ton of grace and humility because I am an incredibly positive, glasses half full type person. So when we talk about suppressing emotions, what I'm doing is I'm so frustrated and angry, I guess, that I'm suppressing that and internalizing that and making that into judgment. That's how I kind of see it now. Let me tell you a story about, now this just happened to me this past June, and it was a little bit of a surprise. So that was the first thing that I noticed when I did the exercise on myself and how much internal dialogue I had. And then I think I didn't get a ton past that, but a couple of years later, I have a greater understanding of how judgment is a completely useless and also very harmful emotion. So my birthday happened in June, and I am, as you can imagine, I work with different coaches and so on. I was talking to my coach and she said, oh, on your birthday, be kind to yourself. And I was like, well, okay, sure. I can be kind to myself. That's fine. She's like, do whatever, you need to do. And you may have heard this, have a great birthday, take care of yourself, enjoy yourself. But she said, be kind to yourself. She said, anytime that you notice on your birthday, just one single day, that you're not being kind to yourself, just put your hand on your heart, take a deep breath. You can, rub your shoulders and say, be kind, be kind, be kind. Okay? So that seems simple enough. And my thought is that I'm basically kind to myself. So I'll be fine with this. And what I started to notice, and this came up really quickly, is in the morning, I was being incredibly unkind to myself. So I had some expectations for my birthday about what would happen and who would give me those things and what would be the order of events in terms of enjoyment and so on. And I was spinning in my head that the people around me were not going to appreciate me in the way that I wanted them to. And so I was like, oh, my husband's not going to bake that cake that I wanted. My kids are going to be so annoying. It's going to be really hard to be kind to myself because everybody around me is frustrating me. And this is my special day. But the good news is because I live in a judgment-free zone and I have adapted this practice over the years, I realized that I was judging the people around me. So I caught myself really quickly. I was like, wow, why do I have this expectation that nobody's going to deliver on my birthday the way that I want them? And I'm hoping you all can relate and I'm not alone here. But I realized that I caught that, put my hand on my heart, took a deep breath and just said the word, be kind. I didn't change the thought. I didn't try and convince myself, you know what? Your husband's going to bake that cake, or your kids are going to be nice to you today, or they actually are excited about your birthday too. And I just, instead of changing my opinion about this, I just put my hand on my heart and I said, be kind, be kind. And what I noticed is that the judgment lifted. It just disappeared. And that's the first piece. Let the judgment go into the trash can. Let it fly out the window. Let it disappear. You have to let the judgment disappear. And so this way of being kind to myself and telling myself that mantra allowed the judgment to just dissipate. And so then therefore, because I was saying be kind, be kind, be kind, instead of just saying, oh, stop it, Stacy, which is also very mean when you say, notice yourself judging. And if you say something like, stop it, stop judging, that is very mean and unkind to yourself. And so because I was telling myself to be kind, I didn't internalize the judgment. I didn't make the judgment about me. And so then therefore, what it did is it just went away and I went on with my day. Guess what? Fast forward to the future. My kids were very kind to me that day. I had an absolutely wonderful birthday. My husband baked the cake. He did everything perfectly. It was an absolutely wonderful day. And I really want you to see here that a huge part of my enjoyment of that day, my ability to really soak in all of the love and joy around me, was because I was kinder to myself, because I didn't harbor negative feelings or resentment. I didn't have judgment that day. And so then therefore, I had a truly magical, wonderful birthday. It felt lighter, easier, more fun than I have had in a while. And so that's the first thing that's possible when you let go of judgment, is that you really get to enjoy and appreciate those around you. I don't know. I think all my clients must be addicted to judgment. Again, like I said, it has to be because we're all so badass, right? So the people around us don't have a clue. So my family I love and I want to love. And so it's easy for me to take all that in. But what do you do if the person around you really is awful? What do you do if you have this negative situation in your life that you don't want to be kind to them necessarily, nor should you? And so then, therefore, it's really difficult to let go of the judgment. Here's how that one works. So I have a client who reports directly to her CEO, and she is very, very good at judging. Really, really, really good at judging. I say that with so much love. And it's kind of like her armor. It's kind of like her MO that says, hey, this is who I am. I'm a strong woman. And so there are, as you can imagine, in an organization, there are lots of people who want to vie for the CEO's attention. that are not willing to go through the hierarchy at the organization, every man out for themselves, and really fight to be seen and heard in meetings, taking credit for ideas that are not their ideas. So this is sort of what this woman is dealing with. And so she should, under all circumstances, if you were out having a drink with her, you might be on the judgment train with her. Like, oh, that's so annoying. That's so frustrating. Can you believe that? How dare they? Maybe you should start looking for another job. All judge, judge, judge. And so what I coach somebody like that to do is to let go of the judgment first. We cannot make any decisions about our career or what kind of conversations we're going to have with somebody or how we're going to show up at work if we're judging the situation. So how do you let go of the judgment? Well, first of all, what I do is give perspective. So I say, well, I'm not saying, I would never actually say this out loud, but kind of the idea of maybe that person is really struggling and the only validation that they have is to show you up. Maybe it's really easy for them to put you down, so then therefore they're just going to push ahead. Actually, I probably did say that to her. And I also point out to her that it's actually not a problem because you have the seat of power. She has a higher position than those people who are trying to push ahead. Yes, she should be threatened by them in the sense that she should watch out for them, watch her back, because clearly they're trying to take credit for some of the work that she did, and she should stand up for herself. But if she does that while she's judging them, no decision, no words out of her mouth are going to make sense. You are either going to do, if you are making a decision and you're choosing to communicate, but you're still in judgment, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to throw in the towel, which is what most women do, is they say, I don't want to deal with this crap. I'm out of here. Or I'm just going to let this play out and who really cares? They're going to kill themselves. So who cares? Or I don't want to work for a company like that anyway, like whatever that might be. Or if you're operating from judgment, you're going to kind of go about this fixing of the situation in a clingy, tight, kind of like scarcity type way. And you've been there. You're like rambling on and on. You didn't say the right things. You spoke up for yourself, but you sounded like a crazy person, right? Like you sounded like the bad guy. And we don't want any of those things to happen. I don't want you to throw in the towel. And I also don't want you to sound like you're the one who has the problem and needs the actual performance improvement plan. Hello, this is exactly what has happened for some of my clients, not the one I'm speaking of, but in general. It always ends up reflecting back on you, and then you look like the bad guy. It's terrible. So what you need to do first is let go of the judgment. So just neutralize it. You put your hand on your heart and you say, be kind. Who are we talking to? Ourselves. All right. Now, this is the important piece. Be kind, be kind, be kind. I am telling you to only be kind to yourself. Don't be kind to the other person. What does being kind to the other person look like? It looks like being nice. Like when we're like, oh, we're going to play nice and we're going to say the nice thing and we're going to smile our way through it. And we know as women that never, ever, 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 ever works. But the problem is that you're doing that niceness at them, but you're not being kind to yourself. You're not being true. If you're really being kind to yourself, so you have this shitty peer or even somebody who's below you who's trying to take credit for your work. Step 2, be kind, be kind. I'm being kind to myself. How do I be kind to myself? It does not, almost never looks like being nice to the other person. It looks a little bit more like taking a step back, talking to your coach, getting perspective. Maybe perhaps talking to somebody who's not just going to commiserate with you in your judgment, but maybe give you that perspective. Figure out a plan, journal about it, write things down, go back to your work for a little while until you get a greater perspective yourself. That is being kind to yourself. You can take that step back. It does not mean being nice to the other person. It means be kind, take care of yourself. Realize that you have the power here, that you belong. Nobody is threatening you. Everything is fine. And then And only then, once you have let go of the judgment, once you are truly kind to yourself, now we make a decision. Now we have that conversation. Now we choose to throw in the towel, but it's coming from a place of really understanding and being truly kind to ourselves. We cannot be kind to ourselves and acting in judgment. It doesn't work that way. So I want each and every one of you listening to take this 30-day pledge, to take the day-long pledge, to first notice the judgment that you have throughout your day, be willing to let go of that judgment, to just throw it in the garbage can. Make sure that along the way that you're being kind to yourself. Put your hand on your heart. I'm literally like rubbing my chest right now. This is good. We need to remind ourselves to take care of ourselves, to love ourselves through this process. Then you can act on whatever is coming up for you in a true, authentic way. I do not advocate for letting people walk all over us. I do not advocate for being nice to people under unruly circumstances. I do not advocate for just going from job to job to job just because we're looking to escape whatever is happening around me. I do not recommend arguing, talking to our friends about how terrible life is. Wouldn't it be great if we could just get out of this male-dominated environment? Like, look at all the suffering and all of this pain that we're having in our work because everybody wants to take credit for our work. We can acknowledge that. We can see that. We can know what's happening. And then you can make a choice. How do you want to speak up for yourself? What is it that you want to create for yourself? Do you want to zigzag? Do you want to move to a different org? Or do you want to stand and fight? But the only way you're going to win the fight is to let go of your judgment. The absolutely single most useless emotion. And it is really unbelievably, like I said, simple to start to get rid of, but it is hard. You're going to notice how much judgment you have. And then you have to remind yourself to be kind because you're going to flip that stuff back on yourself so fast. I'm telling you, it hurts. It hurt when I saw how much I was judging myself in the process. And so having this additional tool to be kind while I was letting go of the judgment made all the difference in the world. All right, I hope this tool works for you as well. Let me know what possibilities open up for you once you finally do start letting go of the judgment in your life. And if you are a corporate badass and you have built your armor up on judgment, more power to you. But how you're going to get through the next 20, 30, 40 years of your career is going to be in a much more spacious, loving, kinder way. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions and decided where you fall in each category and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve, and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time, so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.